You're listening to Wired for Success, the podcast for business owners, entrepreneurs, and anyone who wants to do life on their terms. Hosted by Jamie Morgan, a business coach and entrepreneur who's been there, done it, and is now sharing the stories of those carving their own path. Because success isn't reserved for the chosen few, you were wired for it. So take me back to the beginning, freelancing. What made you decide that this was a fantastic idea? Sunshine and rainbows, so I'm going to live the dream, do something creative, go out there and do things my own way.
I very much come from an entrepreneurial background. Mm-hmm. So my dad started his own business when I was about 7, I think. My mum... she was a teacher. She left her teaching career when I started secondary school and she launched her own business. My eldest sister also started her own business through university to pay her bills. It's just something that has always been in my life. You know, my first job was waitressing for my mum because she was a caterer. Yep. And that was all happening in the house. And
that's a really nice 9-to-5 business to be involved in, isn't it? Your catering business is all done between school runs and.
Not necessarily. You get lots of evening events, and exactly. There was one. We did a week-long event at Sandhurst Military Barracks where it was officer training, and it was sort of the end of the thing. I had to learn silver service for that, and that was a full week of you are there at 6 o'clock in the morning getting ready to serve breakfast until you can leave at about 9:30, 10 o'clock once they've finished dinner. Thankfully that was in the holidays.
So if you want to see the family, then you've got to get involved in the family business and take part.
Pretty much. So that was sort of my grounding, and I did the things through college, university. I worked in retail, but I got to the end of uni and sort of went, I don't really fancy having a boss. I don't like that. I like doing my own thing. So I thought, what can I do? And one of my lecturers sort of went, have you thought about copywriting? Because I did writing degrees and it sort of mixes what I love doing with earning a living. So I spent 6 months selling IT solutions just to build up some cash flow, then launched the business, and that's what I've done for 11 years.
So getting that initial traction, you've built up above it. Lots of people kind of go balls to the wind and just decide, oh hell, I'm going to go off and start this thing up, and they've got no money behind them and no resources. So you've done a great thing by building up that reserve. Of course, there's a massive queue of people at the door wanting copywriting services, aren't there? So it's the easiest thing to go out and sell, because everybody is kind of taught to write at primary school.
Yeah, but they're not. That's the thing. They're taught how to write essays. They're not taught how to write for the real world. Yeah. Particularly like secondary school teaches you a very finite way of writing. And when you get out into the real world, no one wants to read that. No one is interested in how you write that way. So you've got to sort of relearn.
It's amazing, isn't it? We talk in school about writing 2,000 words or a 1,000-word essay or something. We don't talk about developing an idea and it taking as long as it takes, or as short as it needs to be. No. We'd think about quantity over quality.
Yeah, and a very defined structure. You're taught to tell the audience what point you're going to make the point, reiterate the point. It's all about showing that you know the point. And real audiences don't have that amount of attention span. You're not going to hook anyone in with telling them what your point's going to be. You need your introduction to be more about grabbing that attention and going, listen to me, over something else. Then your point still has to stay engaging but be very scannable. So you're not looking at, okay, let's make this a long waffly thing that's a big wall of text. It's, okay, how can I separate this out so people can scan read it? What are the actual important points I need to make, and what's just fluff that are padding it out? And then how do I wrap that all up and make someone actually want to take an action at the end? It's a very different style of writing.
And how did you convince those first few customers? What was the first customer you onboarded?
I was really lucky because the second day of being my own boss, I went to a networking event in Fleet with a group that now doesn't exist anymore. I think they went under during COVID. And I ran into a local SEO guy called Jeff, who is wonderful, and he is very I'm going to give people a try. And he went, oh yeah, no, I use copywriters all the time. Give me a card, I'll give you some work. And I worked for him for 10 years.
Fantastic.
So he was my first client. He gave me sort of the start that I needed. I still did a lot of really... Am I allowed to swear on this?
Of course you can. Be as honest.
Never know.
Honestly, yeah.
I still did a little of really shit jobs on the side, sort of, as you're building up. You know, you go through people per hour and Fiverr, and it's sort of...
They're like earning your battle scars. That
you've got to do it.
Once you've put as many jobs into the bank as you can,
Yeah.
you know,
You can start
move
doing
on to
more.
the things that interest you.
But yeah, it all sort of built from...
So writing for SEO and writing for people's websites, your whole role changes from being a massively creative, as in writing novels and writing creative books, to, you know, your whole purpose is to attract customers and talk about something that can be really bloody boring at times.
Yep.
And having spent hours and hours researching things. So how do you get into that customer's mindset, or first of all the mindset of the business, because you need to learn about what they do, to then put yourself into their customer's mindset?
So one of the things I love doing is researching. I like learning things. So that sort of plays a big role in why I enjoy copywriting as much as I do. The writing bit almost gets a bit formulaic, depending on what I'm doing. But learning the stuff, that's fun. You get to sort of dive into all sorts of topics, and there's so much stuff happening in the world, and learning about the way things work. I do a lot of talking with my customers, so I will usually take them out for coffee, and we will have 1, 2, sometimes 3 hour long meetings in the beginning. Not every meeting, just the first one.
Depends how good the lunch is.
Yeah, true. But all of that meeting is basically them talking and me rapid fire typing and listening to what they're saying. I'm absorbing the way they're saying things as well as what they're saying, and just asking the right questions to pull that information out of them. Pair that with a lot of research, and I think the magic ingredient for me is something that you can't replicate, which is the sort of getting into the head of the business and writing as if you're them. And I think I do that so well because I am autistic, because I have masked my entire life and I've put on these performances and got into these roles, and I can then go, okay, so this is the voice I need to step into today. I can't explain how to do that. I can tell people how to write in their own tone of voice, but I can't explain how I do it for customers. It's really difficult.
It's really interesting, is it? Because a lot of businesses are quite technical. You know, my background was electrical engineering, and there's thousands and thousands of beautifully technical, over-exaggerated words. Equipotential bonding is a fantastic one. The adiabatic equation is another key formula of the electrical industry. And there are countless other ones. And it's so easy to write a page or a website that another engineer understands beautifully.
But can your clients?
But the average office manager that's commissioning your role in that business is a 30-something mother of two that runs a busy office, and she does a bit of HR, she does a bit of the finance, she manages whether there's toilet paper or not in the office that day, and what coffee everybody's fighting over drinking, and organising health and safety is kind of number 500 on her list of things to do. And she needs to be educated enough that she needs to know who's the best company to use, that I'm not going to get fired for it going wrong. Very, very simply. IBM used to have an expression in their marketing years ago that was, if you hire IBM, then nobody will ever get fired for employing us, because whatever project we get involved in, we'll throw the whole resources of the company at your project, and eventually it will work. We're gonna have some hiccups along the way. That's life, but we'll get to the end of it. And I think so many of us love it's a fantastic marketing expression, bullshit baffles brains.
Oh, yes.
And when we write about what we do, we want to overinflate our importance at being the best XYZ of what we do, that we will just write a ton of bullshit at times to make people think, oh, that must justify the price they want to charge us.
And it's full of jargon, and I hate jargon. Jargon is absolute bullshit.
Especially those words like the adiabatic equation, that if you do suffer with dyslexia, dyspraxia, or any other challenge, you know, my oldest stepson suffers with dyslexia, and he's into coding, and I'm like, in my mind, it's the idea of giving you hieroglyphics, expecting you to understand it and then be able to build from it. It's got to be like the most difficult challenge that anybody could ever give you. So working with those customers and taking really technical things, how do you turn them into something that's kind of conversational and warm and engaging for somebody?
So I sort of look at myself and I market myself as sort of the translator between the company and the client, because the company thinks, well, they need to know this, 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 and this. This is exactly how we do it. And they get into the minutiae. And it's my job to go, but does that actually matter? So what? It's my favourite phrase is always just, so what? What does that mean for the customer? That sort of makes them reframe it, and they'll either go, oh, well, no, it kind of doesn't. So, right, then for the purposes of, say, your web copy, it is irrelevant. You know that that's how that works and that gets done, but your client doesn't affect your client, so it doesn't need to be there. If it does, it forces them to think down the route of, okay, what does this really complicated thing actually translate into? Yeah. It means that it takes less time for the client to get from A to B. Right, that's what we focus on, because that's the benefit to the client. That's the thing they care about. They don't care what the nifty tools you're using are called and how expensive they are and how many qualifications you have to use them. They just care that their need is being met. And I think that's a fundamental thing that a lot of businesses get wrong, is that they think quite selfishly. Yep. That isn't a bad thing, but they sort of think, well, we want to tout that we're the best. Customer doesn't care. Customer just wants to know that their need is being met. Yep. If you can show them that their need will be met with you, that's how you get them on board.
Have you ever heard of disc profiles? Really interesting as you talk about the people that have got each of the different kind of characteristics, from the creative person to the highly technical people to the accountants in a business, are involved in buying decisions as much as the office manager that has to get the electrical contractors in, but they want to know the technical stuff. They want to know the payback on the energy saving stuff and things like that. But your marketing at times needs to talk to each of those different audiences and just give them enough information to satisfy that thirst. If somebody else is involved in the buying decision, here's the bone that we're going to throw them, and here is a little bit of the technical jargon. And if you want to know more of the technical, how much it weighs, how much size it's going to take up, and all those kind of things, then the geeky person in the office can have those answers and more if they want them. But most of it's addressed in that way that, as you say, just simplifies things for people.
Definitely. I was going to say something to do with that. Oh yeah, it's the one of the sort of things that always takes customers back when I sort of talk to them is I go through this sort of questionnaire that I've built so I get all the information I need. It's okay, who's your target market? And they'll say, oh, small to medium-sized businesses or finance departments or blah, blah, blah. So, great. Who is the person you are wanting to talk to? Because businesses can't read. And that's the thing, it's like you sort of aim at a business, great, a business is made up of people. Yep. Who are the people in that business that are going to read? Is the CEO the person who's going to be reading this and making the purchasing decision? Or is it his secretary who he's just said, go and find me 3 people who can do this? That's how you sort of need to tailor your content, is think about who is actually reading it rather than who you want to read it.
The slideshow classic of the first slideshow is we're a company that's been in business 30 years, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, well, if we didn't trust you enough to get you in to do the proposal, we've done all that kind of groundwork first to know who you are and the fact that, you're a family business and all this kind of stuff. People waste so much time regurgitating information that they think is important to somebody when it's actually probably been part of their buying process already to justify the fact that we're going to meet you and have you into the room. So that onboarding process, most small businesses I've worked with over the last 5 or 6 years, you take them on board from a marketing point of view, and it's like rabbit in the headlights. After they sign your contract, they shrink back because they think we've got no content. They think that we've got no brand materials. They literally just kind of that rabbit in the headlights look of where do we go from here. So how do you take that customer on board? What the first kind of steps of working with somebody to kind of help them unravel all of the gems that they've got? Because most businesses have got tons of stories, tons of case studies, interesting people in their business. There's 1,001 things to write about. But you've now got to channel all that into something cohesive.
It's just a case of talking to them and knowing how to get the right questions. So that's the reason that my sort of onboarding meetings can go on for so long sometimes. My husband hates it. We never control the length of a meeting. So the meeting's as long as it needs to be. Yeah. Because it's, okay, I need to get to know the person who's sitting in front of me. Like, they need to get to know and trust me, but I need to get to know them, what drives them. If they're the business owner on their own as a sole trader, that's
You're going to be doing even
critical.
more work for them, aren't you? You know, it's you're taking over the whole marketing role in.
And it's sort of just sort of drawing these things out and asking the questions. It's like, okay, so give me an example of. My favourite is give me an example of when something's gone wrong with work you've done for a client. And I ask this a lot for sort of particularly case study interviews. People don't always want to know about what happens when it goes right. They want to know what happens when it goes wrong as well.
First thing you do on Amazon is you have a look at all the one-star reviews and see what's gone wrong on that product.
What's
first.
gone wrong?
Yeah.
What did you do to fix it? Yeah. That question tells me a lot about the ethos and the way that company works, which helps me then sort of build it in. And some of it just comes over time. In my research, I will sort of come up with things and I will ask them questions. They will come up with articles and spam them at me because I always say, like, give me all the
educate you about their industry, things that are happening.
Give me all the information. I would rather have too much information than not enough. So if you think it could be useful to me, send it over. And over time, we just sort of keep picking and picking. And like this month, I work for a landscape grounds maintenance company. I've been writing for her for about nearly 4 years. So I know her very, very well. I know her business, her ethos, and I know what sort of works. 99.9% of the time, the content I write ticks every box straight away. Yeah. This month it didn't. And she came back and went, I can't really use this. And here's why. And here's sort of the ethos behind it. And that was when I was able to sort of go, oh, right, okay, that's a really useful piece of information. And I can then sort of I bend the content around it. And that then sparks off 3 or 4 other bits of content.
Is that because you don't know some of the little tiny nuances within an industry?
At the end of the day, I'm not in her head. Yeah. So there's always going to be the little bits and pieces. And it's why your relationship with your copywriter is so personal. I always say, like, I know I'm not the right copywriter for everyone, and that's totally okay. Yeah. But you've got to find someone who you can have those conversations with, who gets you, but you're not afraid to go, actually, no, that's not quite right. Who will then understand it and go, oh, yeah, right, no, I'm with you, let's readdress this. So
that working relationship with a copywriter isn't kind of a engage and forget. It really is a working relationship. So the client almost becomes, I want to say editor-in-chief, but they're also uneducated in marketing styles or marketing types at times, so they don't always understand where you're driving at. Or I suppose if you're working with a company not on a one-off commission, you might be developing a theme or a series of articles that, you know, the idea plays one into another. Yeah. I know that one of the things we do with marketing is one of my favourite bits with a client early on is what I call my murder board, and literally we'll research all of the things our customers do. And so you've got Mrs. Jones, she's got 2 dogs, they're likely to have an estate car, she shops at the White Company, and she goes to M&S for her food, and they're all very stereotyped here, listens to Radio 5 first thing in the mornings, and we'll put all these things on a board, and we call it our murder board because we've researched it. So when we're writing or we're producing a website or we're helping guide them to where they're going to advertise, we're thinking about how it links in with all the things that person's already seeing and doing. But you also see an awful lot of common themes. For example, if you took the Next website, the White Company, and a few others, you could just swap the logos out from a lot of them because there's a familiarity between the way that the brand colours and everything follows through. And a lot of time people aren't putting that thought together. No. And when you're thinking about marketing, you're thinking about how are we using the website, how are we using direct mail, how are we using blog articles, how are we using social media posts, and how's the kind of thread of a theme. We were helping a charity recently looking at neurodiversity in several different parts of the charity, and their approach to education was what I called a golden thread that ran through all of the education from primary level through to work experience and getting into the workplace. Yeah. When you've developed this idea of the golden thread, it can run through all their marketing, it can run through the photography, it can run through all sorts of different things. But if you took any single one piece of work, it'll be out of context at times. Yeah. So do you find that at times that people don't often understand where you're going, possibly to lead the theme of articles?
Yeah, sometimes. I try and, particularly if I'm doing, say, blog writing, which is all my bread and butter, is I will manage your blog. I try to provide plans for, generally I will do a quarter at a time purely because I learnt my lesson during COVID of not planning too far ahead. So I'll try and sort of create a plan and go, right, here is what we're doing for the next 3 months, 6 months. Here's sort of the angles I'm going at and the themes I'm going at. And some of it will relate to seasonality, what's going on in their industry at the time. So I do copy for a company that does all of the food sampling and demonstrations and stuff. So we've got to look at, okay, when there are articles that are going around about food safety, then that's something we can sort of tap into. You've got to be quite fluid with it sometimes.
Do many companies have a marketing calendar to guide what they're doing throughout the year, or is it a little bit more ad hoc for most people?
It's a bit ad hoc for most people, and for some of my clients it is just I am their marketing calendar, and I sort of go, right, here's what we're going to talk about, and it informs everything else. Some clients are really good with it and just have like, yep, this is sort of where we're mapping out how do we fit things in. But it really depends.
You just talked about COVID. How did COVID affect you and your business? That's a challenge a lot of business owners went through. And do you know, there's a real spectrum of the way that businesses went through. Some had phenomenal times and others had a real rocky time.
I had a double whammy because 30 days before lockdown 1, I gave birth.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so that's a little distraction from running a business.
Tiny bit. So when I say that I learnt my lesson from COVID, I had spent the last 3 months of my pregnancy basically working double time, pre-writing 3 months worth of content for all of my clients so that I could have maternity leave. Because when you're self-employed...
You've still got to bring the money.
Yeah, who's going to cover you? It's not a thing that, you can really do. And that was all set, it had all been approved, and it was all fine. And then COVID hit, and my phone would not stop ringing from clients panicking, going, we need to just do a complete 180 and address this, and we need to change everything. So I think I got 30 days of maternity leave before I was, okay, I'm going to go to work with a baby strapped to my chest. So it was a challenge. I found there was an initial sort of big sweep of people wanting to put lots of content out there and sort of keep up with everything, particularly like the HR companies. I mean,
there were so many changes for HR.
Yeah.
Literally from week to week. Monday morning you think you're going in one direction, Monday afternoon.
Yeah, it's another one.
Boris has announced something new and you've got to adapt and flex.
Yeah, so there were a couple of sort of industries where it's like, okay, we've got to be really, really fast getting things out in order to keep up. Others, it was just hey, we want to be showing that we know what's going on and how we're going to deal with it and this, that and the other. Then there was a big swathe of, oh shit, this is lasting longer than we thought. I don't want to spend any money.
Yeah, I was involved in the photography industry at the time, marketing and helping photographers, working for a trade association. And overnight, after that kind of 30 days, got into 45 days, got to 60 days, and then you've got the massive creative industry that have got no income. Mm-hmm. And they're cancelling their trade association memberships and everything like that. So for 30 days, we're like, this is how to improve your website, and this is how you can improve some of your marketing, and these are all the positive things, and let's all meet for a coffee online on a Friday afternoon and have a chat and, support everyone's mental health. After 60 days, it's like, sugar. We've got to batten down the hatches and change. And that was the phone calls you were experiencing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a few customers that sort of hung on through it because the thing I was trying to get across is like now more than ever is when you need to be visible. So you're less concerned about making sure that the message is 100% accurate all of the time. Right now,
we're still in business.
Yeah, hundreds of businesses are failing every single day because they can't cope with COVID. You want to make sure that you don't look like one of them. Because when you've been putting out lots of regular content and it suddenly stops, that is not a good look. Yeah. So it was hey, it's important to be visible right now. You need to be marketing, but...
It's one of the biggest things I say to companies is that, you don't need to be posting on LinkedIn every day. But, if you go approach a business of any kind and you look at their social media or you look at their Google business profile or you look at their blogs and they've not published anything for 3 months... You start to wonder, you're still in business, are you going to respond to my inquiry quickly? Is there a conversation to be had? Whereas if it's a couple of weeks, that's reasonably regular. Someone's posting something every fortnight, every once a month, things like that. But that knock-on effect of COVID, still, there's hundreds and hundreds of businesses' websites out there that have we met a cleaning company last week that is doing some marketing refreshment and re-looking at how they're running the business, passing over from a father to a son, and the son needs some management support to help him kind of grow into being the new managing director. And one of the first conversations is the website, the front page is all about COVID.
Yeah.
That's 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's like,
So
you need to
is that
update
the
this bit.
most relevant conversation about the problems that your customers are having 5 years later? It probably isn't. So, keeping relevant in that communication is really important.
Yeah, a lot of people forgot to update banners and things to sort of say, hey, we're doing this for COVID. It's like, great. That's not relevant anymore. It was at the time, but you've got to remember to take it off again afterwards.
So like you, I've got a young family, and that brings a lot of unique challenges. Our children must be roughly the same kind of age, because during COVID, when Leanne was back photographing, she was at one point photographing just after COVID she's a baby and family photographer, and she was photographing a baby catalogue collection for a local baby products website, and my daughter was there, months old, in a not a harness, what do you call it, a wrap around my other half, and I've got a photograph from behind the scenes of her with the camera and Taylor's face just popping out over her shoulder, and that's today we've been at sports day just before coming back to the studio, but it brings a whole set of challenges. So how do you manage that dreamy job of flexible hours, working from the beach with your laptop to create all the things that don't really happen, but how do you manage those challenges of a young family, and both you and your partner effectively being self-employed or small businesses?
This is the thing, like we're both self-employed, which makes it sort of, in a way, makes it easier, and in a way makes it a lot harder.
Herding cats most of the time.
Yes. So my husband has ADHD, and he needs structure in order to do things. Sort of. Yeah. He doesn't like structure, but he needs it.
That's why we're creative.
Yeah. So he operates office hours, which is basically I work between this time and this time, which means that I do school runs, and I do sort of the little bits and pieces of looking after him before and after, and I don't mind that, because I have a job where I can pick up and put down. All I need is a laptop, or I've got a digital notebook, which was absolutely my saviour when my son was younger, because the laptop was a shiny, exciting toy. Yeah. And anytime, he could be really into playing with something, but the second the laptop came out, it's no, I want that. It was
a bang on the keyboard. And Taylor ended up having her own one of our old laptops, so that she could bang and crash and smack it with a hammer and do all the stuff she wanted to do with it on the floor, so that
the other ones didn't get damaged. So I gave up. I bought a Remarkable purely for that, because it wasn't a tablet. It didn't do anything funky. The first time I got it out, he sort of did a few scribbles. I went, not interested. Because
actually copywriting, there's a gentleman that behavioural scientist that you probably will have come across on TikTok and YouTube and things like that, Rory Sutherland, and he makes a fantastic comment about creatives, especially architects, that going and sitting down with a blank sheet of paper to design a house. Creativity is not like that. Creativity is about going to the park, going to a museum, going to an art gallery, getting a piece of inspiration, studying something, spitballing some ideas, doodling, scribbling, then revisiting it to polish an idea into something that's formed. And I suppose to a large extent copywriting is like that. So it's not just a visit something once and it's put to bed.
There's multiple stages to it. So having sort of something that I can just whip out and go, right, I'm going to scribble some notes down for this. Next time I'm at my desk, I can pull that together into a rough draft, put it back on the notepad, and then I can edit.
Revisit it while I'm at a coffee shop having...
Yeah, and I am known for taking either my tablet or my laptop pretty much anywhere I go. So now that he's 5, he's a bit more independent, so I take my laptop to soft play. Yep. He gets to run around and chuck some energy out, and I sit there and get 2 hours of
noise cancelling earphones, and
I get a lot of weird looks because I'm generally the only person there with a laptop desperately trying to work through screaming kids, but
we were on holiday recently, and there was a few emails and a few bits that still had to get done. So either at 11 o'clock at night, you're sat there on a balcony with a glass of wine and doing a little bit of emails, or you're there at 5 o'clock in the morning before everybody else is up.
I enjoy that though. There's I can't remember who said it, but it's write while drunk, edit while sober. And some of my best writing has happened after I had a few glasses of wine, and it's like, my husband's gone out for the evening, so I've put Aiden to bed, and I've got a few hours before he comes home. I'm going to sit and do some work and have a glass of wine. I'll come out with some brilliant stuff, and I'll be really inspired, and I'll get loads done. But you have to do the editing bit in the morning.
Do you often write too much?
Yes, I can get quite verbose, and so a lot of that exercise is, well, okay, we don't need that, and we've said that already, and this can be said in a better way, and sort of pulling it and polishing it together. The first draft is never the finished draft, and I've had to explain that to clients sometimes, because I'll send them a first draft, and they go, oh yeah, great, publish it. It's like, no, I haven't even proofread this yet. Yeah. This is almost a proof of concept. This is, are we in the right direction? Yeah. Have I covered everything you want me to cover? Is the tone right? Make sure that this is actually sort of feeling the way you want it to feel. If that feels perfect on the first go, great. It means that I've really nailed in where I am, and I can polish it off and go. But I had to tell a client off once because they took the first draft and published it. I was like, no! What are you doing?
There's still spelling mistakes in there.
Yeah.
And
that's another thing I learned sort of early on in business, and I sort of carry on now. It's more relevant for the bigger projects, but it's the same for sort of whether you're doing taglines or anything else. It's that I don't tend to do my editing cycle until the client is happy with the content. And I explain up front with clients, like my first draft, maybe my second or third draft, depending on how many we go through, they're probably going to be spelling mistakes, little grammar things. I promise you there won't be in your final one. I just don't edit it, because if you come back and say, like my client recently, I can't use this. Yeah. I don't want to have to wasted more time editing that to say you don't like it. I'd rather do all that at the end when you're happy.
So I added that little bit in at the beginning. It's a little bit of a cheeky slap, really, that we kind of all learned how to write in school. And what do you think is the biggest misconception that most business owners have about copywriting?
That it's easy. It's one of those things, and I equate it to singing. Everyone can sing, but not everyone can sing well.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say I can sing.
Everyone has that friend who thinks they can sing really well and they couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. Mm-hmm. And it's the same with writing. Yes, you can put words on a page in sentences. Yeah. Are those words arranged in the right order, in the right tone, to convey the message you want, to attract the right person, or to repel the wrong person? I say copywriting is sort of 50% attraction and 50% repulsion, because you don't want to waste your time with people who aren't going to fit your...
I mean, there's been some massively famous copywriters that have had very distinctive styles. There was Drayton Bird that's got a very... He wrote the earliest of the Barclaycard letters, and he wrote a 4-page sales letter to get people to sign up to Barclaycard in the 80s. And his mentality was, you can write as much as you need to write to sell an idea, and if the person's interested, they'll read the 4 pages. And that's equally as much of a funnel for the right customer as the 3 paragraphs that it takes to sell someone that's really interested in buying a Porsche on a Porsche advert that they've seen 1,000 times. And then there's other copywriters like Dan Kennedy had a very explosive direct marketing, almost argumentative, bold headlines that really made you stop in your tracks. What I would call kind of almost like Sun journalist style of copywriting, to the information sales era of CD-ROM courses and self-education really followed that technique for a good decade in the 80s and 90s. But the part that really interests me, and I think that business owners will struggle with at times, is in SEO at the moment there's a way of characterising the kind of content on a website as to whether it's commercial content that is to sell a product, whether it's informational or whether it's educational. And I think at times you need a different language, a different style, and a different understanding of your audience. And that's where most people aren't putting the kind of legwork into throwing words onto page.
Yes.
And
it's the saying, there's a difference between a content writer and a copywriter. Yeah. A copywriter can write content, but a content writer can't write copy. And it's sort of, okay, are you doing marketing-based stuff? Are you doing informational, educational? Or are you being madmen and writing really short and sweet ad copy that is sort of that designed to really grab and stick and sell?
The Sun headline should be no more than 3 words. Yes. King is dead, or whatever the thought line was.
There will be a really strict set of rules about how those headlines are created that those journalists will have had to learn.
And that's where they get the editor, that Kelvin McKenzie, the other guys that are complete They must be arseholes to work for, because you would be coming up with 30 or 40 ideas, going in there to pitch, and being absolutely obliterated and thrown back to the newsroom and discarded. I can't imagine a nicer place to work than the Sun newsroom.
When I worked at the IT company that I worked for, one of the techs was married to a Sun editor. Okay. I met her at the Christmas party.
Taught you everything you need to know about.
I did not get on with her very well, and we sort of chatted with the guy afterwards and went, oh no, she's very critical, makes her very good at her job. Yeah. I'm sure.
When it comes to the mindset of Sun readers, that's a very distinct audience to kind of talk to. You talked there about writing copy for websites and things like that. There's a lot of web designers that are either working from... I tease a couple of web designers I know and graphic designers, and they make things look pretty with crayons. It's the common, doesn't matter what career you have, there's always someone that's going to find something funny. When I was involved in the fire service and the search and rescue, walked to fairies and Boy Scouts and things like that, the guys in search and rescue. But one of the things with a lot of web designers, they start off with a very templated website, which they'll put blocks together in a page layout, and then they'll turn around to you and say, right, we want some copy. And there's a lot of times that people will just write to fill a gap. Going back to the newspaper days, right? There's 3 columns and there's 500 words.
Yeah. Here's what you've got to fill.
Here's the gap. Fill it. How do you deal with those kind of things when it comes to being creative and actually not putting too much down when it doesn't take too much and help it? A website needs to be cohesive. Yes. Develop a theme, develop an idea, establish credibility. Sometimes that doesn't take an awful lot if you've got a reasonably unique business that's been around for a long time and got a good reputation. How does that kind of creative process differ compared to blog posts or marketing content and things like that?
It's very focused, and that's not to say that doing other kinds of content isn't, but rather than sort of going, we're going to be very general in the informational and educational, that's very broad, we're going, okay, what are the absolute essential points that we need to get across in order to get someone to pick up the phone or to write the email or whatever action you want them to take? And fitting things into blocks doesn't always work. I will try to accommodate that where I can. I would say you need to sort of chunk up your text anyway. People don't like reading walls of text, so chunking it up is good. But I have a couple of web designers I've annoyed because we've had backs and forths. They've written too much for this block, and now the image doesn't fit. So great, find another image. That's the content that needs to be there. And no, you can't chop that sentence off and put it over there. Otherwise, it ruins the entire thing, which is great fun. But it is really going, okay, what are the essentials? What are the questions that your clients are asking and typing into Google? Because that's the biggest thing that people get wrong, is they sort of, when you go, what are your keywords? Oh, I want to be found for this, this, and this. No. What are people typing in
that's really
to find you?
So we've lived the technology generation, and we've been there from early computers through to the modern technology, and the search in the last 10 years has changed massively. The cleverness of Google behind the scenes.
Oh, it's mind-blowing.
Has changed from us putting plumber Woking or plumber Farnborough into Google and expecting results to us asking a question.
And getting really detailed summary answers.
So again, that's probably changing the way you're creating content for websites to try and hope to get into that detailed answers. So
one of the things that we look at is the accordion on Google, where it sort of goes, people have also asked. And I've had clients sort of go, how do I get into that? So you've got to create content that answers those questions.
In more detail.
It doesn't have to specifically be that question, but Google is looking at, okay, this is the key terms. Where is some content that's answered that? FAQ pages used to be a bit of a nice to have. They're an absolute must now. That's how you get into that accordion. You need an FAQ page that is, here is the question, here is a summary answer.
So I started my first business in 1994. Google was maybe a little bit earlier, 92, somewhere around there. And, Google was new. And the web pages, you used to be able to buy a directory of web pages.
Yeah.
Like Yellow Pages. And you go to the newspaper shop and you buy a directory of web pages. And the interesting thing is, I never thought like you do now about the way that we'd be able to search. And even more so, the fact that Google's actually telling me what it wants me to produce for it.
Yeah.
We overcomplicate marketing at times. It's marketers are great at creating their next career. SEO and then social media, and then we've gone back to SEO again. And the interesting thing is it's just all comes back down to customers and understanding your customers, what they want, what they struggle with, what their problems are. Google's phenomenal at telling us that for free.
Yeah. If you go into the Google's AdWords tool, you don't have to spend any money or run any ads, but you plug in a few basic bits of information about your business and it will spit out the search queries that people are using to find businesses like yours. And I sort of always say to clients, if they say, I've not got any keywords, like, I do that for them for free. Yeah. I don't claim to do SEO. SEO is this big, and I know this much. Yeah. I'm fully aware of that.
And that's changing daily, weekly.
Yeah.
And Google won't tell you about it until about 6 months after they made a change, and then they're already into their next change.
I think everyone gets a bit confused because Google does these big updates, and people sort of think, well, that's it. It's like Google's updating their algorithm like 3 or 4 times a day. Yeah. Like, stuff is changing all the time. It is absolutely impossible to keep up with it all. The best you can do is follow sort of best practices now. And they change. So there's a quite a big part of your role is continuous professional development. It's a really fancy word for having to keep educating yourself. And with that kind of moving goalposts, you've got a lot of time and energy that goes back into, that's not spent with a pen in hand. You're thinking about what's next. How do I stay relevant with my skills? How do I spend time doing those things? Yeah, and how do you work out what's the best route for your customers to take?
Is there more marketing involved in your job than you thought was going to be there?
Yes. And it's one of those bizarre things because I sort of always say I don't do marketing because I see marketing as the umbrella term for the 1,000 things that come under marketing, and I am one of those things. But you still have to think about how your sort of bolts affects everyone else's. And that always seems to come out at networking events when someone asks me a question and I sort of know vaguely what the answer is, but say, but go talk to an actual professional about it. Yeah. And that's on social media, and I can't stand managing social media. Tried it in the beginning of the business, didn't get on with it.
Didn't hit my boxes much either,
But I ended up having a really long conversation and giving lots of sort of information about, well, you need to think about this and this, and this platform doesn't like this. How did I retain this information? But
things that you. So one of the other things that's changing massively, and I know we've had a little conversation about this before, is artificial intelligence. And the interesting thing for me is, I started working life as that tech geek, and I've still got those tinges of, how does it work? What do we do with it?
Yeah.
How can we make some money with it? What's the entrepreneurial side? Is there some opportunity here? And genuinely, with artificial intelligence, the next 10 years are going to make more millionaires than any other time of our history through the development of technology, changing humankind. How's it affecting copywriting?
It's not hugely. Purely from the sort of my standpoint of it is the people who are going to use AI content would never come and pay me anyway. It's not a thing I'm competing for business with. It is a useful tool. Sorry, I have hay fever. It's a useful tool, so it's very good for blank page syndrome. If you're sort of sitting there going, I know what I want to write about, but I can't quite get. I always say, ask ChatGPT to spit you out a paragraph. Go in and edit it. That'll get you in the flow to get started. It's good for sort of idea generation. If you want to workshop headlines and sort of see, okay, what are the different ways I could phrase this? Yeah. What it's not good for is relying on it to create your content. It's a cool bit of tech, but it is known to fabricate things. It's known to just make shit up as it goes along. And the thing I think people forget is that it's learning using everything that's on the internet. And there's so much information on the internet. It's wonderful. The internet has Reddit and Twitter and some very not nice places on it.
That's what I say. There's no one stopping me from going and starting a website for something really unsavoury tomorrow, writing thousands of pages of content very, very quickly to rank on Google, and within 18 months it to be as part of the library on ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And if I've got 1,000 pages on a subject, it would view me as an authority on it.
Yeah.
So you could become the authority on, I don't know, something really unsavoury. I don't know too many
Your brain
unsavoury
doesn't
things.
work that way, Jamie.
I do, just most of them weren't publishable. But you
But it can be corrupted as well.
You could be the biggest Trump supporter in the world, and you could spin any bits of politics any way that you want. And at some point, if you're very clever with the SEO and you're very clever with how you promoted it online, you could get enough spin-off stories off of your website onto mainstream news platforms so that it made it look like it was something that actually happened. This week there is a video on Twitter that has been doctored of Keir Starmer, the French president, and 2 or 3 other people sitting around a table, like we are now, starting a conversation. We've just come in, and the French president grabs a tissue, like you've probably got hay fever, grabs a tissue that shouldn't be in the picture, and someone else moved something else out of the way, and the bots that they've used made it look like that white tissue is a bag of cocaine, and made it look like the thing that the other person swept off the table like this was a line of coke. And do you know, if you publish it enough places and you link to it on Twitter and you drop it onto Reddit and you drop it everywhere else, then very quickly, oh yeah, it's another bit of video that they sit round in government meetings doing lines of coke. Do you know, at some point, somewhere in the world, someone might have done it. But
yeah, that doesn't
it being
mean
something
that
that's in
was...
the media, and that was, and I think that concerns me. Yeah, the quality of what we're actually feeding into technology really does concern me as to what I do like to use ChatGPT for when I tend to write content for myself is it's very easy for me to put a load of ideas on a sheet of paper, and I might think, I'm presenting a talk and we're going to talk about this and this and this and this, and here are some key lines or key phrases I want to use and talk. And we talked earlier about tone, and it's very easy for you not to have a consistent tone throughout the words that you're using in an article. And I find sometimes it's easy for it to act as my editor and kind of help me rewrite that tone or get thoughts in the right order so it develops a cohesive, not being funny, my partner would quite happily sit there and edit my stuff and tell me what she thinks is right and wrong. So there's times to use it as a tool, use it as an assistant. Yeah,
just don't rely on it to do the thing for you, kind of thing.
Every time you got someone to do your homework for you at school, it was never your words and it was never your tone, and the teacher would know that you'd had someone else do your homework.
It doesn't know you. It just makes you sound really generic. And I freak some of my customers out because some of them have started sending me sort of briefs that I look at and go, no, that's not come from you. Yeah. One of my clients I'm writing newsletters for, and she sort of, I gave it a go, and you look at it and went, ChatGPT wrote that. How did you know that? Yeah. You can tell.
Keywords.
Once you know, it has a certain style and a certain pattern, and once you know how ChatGPT tends to spit content out, you can spot it a mile off.
I've got friends that will use ChatGPT, then put it into Claude and ask Claude to rewrite it, and then put it into a third tool, into Perplexity, and then ask Perplexity to rewrite it. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, once you've got the idea and you've kind of got the framework, go and write it for yourself. Yeah. Put it in your own words.
If you're going through that amount of work, it'd be just as much to do it yourself, and it'd be better for it.
So going back to doing all the work, with a young family, you've got school runs, you've got doing all of the copywriting for your customers and all the writing work. When you get time to do the marketing, the admin, the networking, all those other things, and functioning as a mum?
With difficulty.
I told you I was going to make you be honest about things.
Yeah, no.
Because everything you do, there's whatever you want to do in life. We can do anything in life. And the best bit of advice someone gave me years ago is you can't do everything. No.
I can't remember who I heard say it, but it's like life is a juggling act. And you have too many balls. That's just how life is now. Doesn't matter how much of an organised person is, you will have too many balls to keep in the air at once. So every day is a decision of which ball do I let fall today? Yeah. Which one is the one that's least important? Being a mum is never the one I let fall. Yeah. Because he's my kid. I love him to pieces and I owe him to always be there. I'm not always the best version of myself that I'd like to be. but he is sort of a big priority. So sometimes the admin doesn't get done.
Yeah.
And I hate myself for it the next week when I've got double the amount of admin to do. Sometimes it gets done at 11:30 at night once everyone else has gone to bed.
I'm awful for booking networking events, and it's like, oh, I really want to go there to this event. And then you've had early runs, you've fought the kids to get them to school. You know, both of us were members of BNI in Hampshire, and we had the luxury of a 9:30 meeting. And there were times that you'd walk in the door to the building, and BNI's like a family. There are times that people are getting on really well. There's times that people have had squabbles and not seen eye to eye over things, or, you know, but before they walk in that door in the morning, you know, I've walked, fought Taylor to get her to school, to then jump in the car, to rush to Farnborough to get to the meeting, and you walk in the door and you're like, God, I'm here.
Yeah, I did it.
I now need coffee, and by about halfway through the meeting, you're kind of relaxed back into your business mindset. And then I look at things sometimes, I think, oh, there's a Thursday night Institute of Directors event, Basingstoke Aldi, going to be a really great evening, some good people I know that are there, looking forward to carrying on some conversations. It's at 6 o'clock in the evening. So what are you doing? Are you doing bath time and bedtime?
Yep.
Or are you sacrificing that to go and push your business forward a little bit more? Are you sacrificing a decent night's sleep because you've got a 5 o'clock start for a networking event the next day? You know, there's a lot of challenges to being a
and there are some.
parent.
So like next week is half term, which is
We've got no.
I feel like
school
we only
clubs
just
this
went
week.
back.
Yeah.
And this is the month that my son decided he said at the beginning of the month, I don't want to do after school club anymore. And externally I was like, okay, you know, I want you to have some agency in what you do with your time. Internally I'm going off.
Yep.
Really? Like, it's only 3 days a week and only for a couple of hours, but those couple of hours make a difference. Yeah. And so I've kind of gone, okay, he's only gone back at the beginning of this month and now we're at half term again at the end. So I've got to try and work out how to get my work done before half term. Yeah. And my husband said this morning, so, oh, you've got networking in the diary tomorrow. Are you going to that? No. Because if I go to that networking event, I'm not going to have done all my work before half term, which means I'm going to have to try and find time in half term to do that work. And that's going to be so stressful for everyone involved, particularly because Aidan, he's not been formally diagnosed yet because he's too young for the council, but he has ADHD. Yep. He needs constant attention and stimulation. He's not the kind of kid that can just go and bury himself in something for an hour. He's always on the move. There's always something new to do. So
you've just talked several times about your husband, yourself, and Aidan all having superpowers. How do you think they've benefited your business?
I don't think that neurodiversity is superpower, so to speak. I understand why people call it a superpower because it's trying to put a very positive spin on it, but the thing is it can be debilitating at the same time.
Yeah. Procrastination is one of my super skills, and becoming overwhelmed with something, because what I would say I'm really good at is I'm really good at connecting the dots going forward, to steal a term from Steve Jobs. But literally I can sit there and you say, you want to develop your business? Well, we need to do this and this and this and this, and I can draw you the timeline, and these are all the things we're going to do to make it happen.
Doing it, on the other hand.
And I learnt very early on, you know, in the 80s I was told that I was hyperactive as a child, and you were kind of the troublesome child in the class, and I was bored in class because I was ahead of everybody. And what I learnt about myself was I can't do long-term projects. 2 weeks, a month at max. When we were on engineering projects, most of our engineering projects were 2 weeks, in, out, 2 weeks, done, on to the next thing. And I could never go and work in the same office, day in, day out, for 20 years, or factory. My head would explode. But what I think that most people, entrepreneurship and being on the spectrum kind of go hand in hand for so many people. Yeah. Because they don't fit a box. Mm-hmm. And
they struggle, particularly like the number of people who have autism who are in work is quite low. Yeah. More of them are self-employed because there's a level of structure and routine that their brains need, and that their brains don't let them bend One of the things I struggle with a lot is rigid thinking. So you get sort of a way of doing something, and it has to be that, and it's very difficult to break out of that. And
as a marketer and as a creative, 90% of what we're doing is trying to find a way that's not inside the box, and that's why it attracted me, because actually, if I can find something that's different than everybody else is doing it, we'll stand out.
Yeah. And that's the positive side of it, is that we're very good at seeing patterns and sort of going, oh yeah, okay, so this means this, which means the best way to do this is X. And we're very good at coming up with different ways of thinking. I love the fact that a way that my brain works is that when someone is talking to me about their business, it doesn't have to be in a client meeting or anything like that. Someone could just be talking at me about their business, and my brain is going blog post, blog post, blog post. It's just how my brain works, which makes it very easy for me to then put together blog plans, because that's how I see the world, is sort of trying to separate it out into bite-sized chunks. So that works quite well for me.
So you say you don't see it as a superpower. So what challenges does it bring you?
I get overwhelmed quite easily. So I'm in a stage now, I'm managing my sort of mental health quite well. I had sort of a lot of hormonal imbalances that were making that very difficult. So the last 5 years of life in business have been very hard. There have been days when I just wanted to pack it all in and just go, no, I can't do this anymore. I can't face writing that email. I'm too overwhelmed as a baseline to deal with this.
Some days that you just get through the day, and tomorrow's going to come, and
you deal with that challenge.
Write today off.
And sometimes the rigid thinking keeps me on a path that isn't necessarily the best one. So I'll sort of go, no, this is the way that this has to go. This is the thing I have to do to achieve X, Y, or Z. And I'll stick with something longer than is good for anyone. To the point where it's no longer bringing any positives and it's all negatives. And my husband usually says, like, if you've realised it's time for you to stop something, you should have stopped 3 months ago.
Does that affect your commercial viability of relationships at times? Is that a case of, because I struggle with the opposite thing, what I call bright shiny object syndrome. Is like,
shiny red ball. Shiny red ball.
I'm like the squirrel on Pixar. There's always something to be interesting. My other half's like, shut all the tabs down on that right hand part of the screen and focus on the left hand side. Sometimes, and it's usually if I've picked up a client that isn't great, because we've all had clients that either you're not a good fit or they're just not great clients, like something in that relationship isn't working. My gut will say, this isn't right. And the bank manager's saying, shit, you need to get some invoices in. So I will sort of go, no, we're going to carry on and I'm going to persevere. And, for a large part of the early part of my career is I'm going to bend over backwards. I'm a people pleaser. I'm going to do everything to make this work until it breaks. And a large part of my confidence would break with it, and there would be huge setbacks. And again, my husband, being the sort of shiny red ball, went, I could see that was never going to work. That was greatest supporter, greatest critic, all in the same.
He is an absolutely fantastic bullshit detector. That's his superpower. So if I've got an off vibe about a client, I'll go and talk to him about it, and he will sort of say yes or no, and 99% of the time he's right. It has sort of kept me in places where is not best for me at times. But there are aspects of it that are very good for business. The fact that I like learning things means that
you're adapting and changing.
I'm sort of a very diverse thinker, and bringing that to my clients is incredibly valuable. I also sort of see it as I know how to wrangle the neurodiverse, because between the three of us, we have the full spectrum, well, not the full spectrum of it, but, my mum is dyslexic, husband a child with ADHD, I am autistic. Like, we have a fairly good understanding of it all. So a lot of my clients are also neurodiverse, and their particular sort of neurodiversities are meaning that they can't keep up with content. They're struggling to just sort of put things out. And I can sort of go, right, okay, I can deal with that for you, and I can work in a way that your brain is going to cope with.
You can attract the customers that you can empathise with.
You started your business with courage. A bold step to do things your way. When it gets tough, it's your restless determination that keeps it going. Growing a business isn't easy, but with business coaching from Help Me Grow, You'll soon be getting customers like clockwork. Together, we'll find the gaps, fix the marketing, and master the numbers. You'll soon have a business that delivers for you, the business owner. To discover how Jamie Morgan can help grow your business, book your complimentary coaching call today. Visit helpmegrow.co.uk for more information.
Understand how to work with them and attract more of the people that actually suit you to work with at times.
I have a client who, she is awful at reading her emails because it's sort of, if I don't see it, it's not there. She doesn't have her emails on her phone. So it's okay, I know that I can't get through to you via email. I WhatsApp you or I Facebook Messenger you because that's how you cope with the world, is that way. So that's how we're going to communicate. One client who communicates entirely in voice notes, which I hate doing voice notes, but I do it for them anyway because I know that they would struggle to sit and read the block of text if I were to send it that way.
So the premise behind this podcast, as I explained to you before we went on air, was the title came from a piece of text from a motivational speaker called Zig Ziglar in the 1970s. And he used the expression that you're born to win, but you need to prepare to win and expect to win. And it really made me believe that we're all kind of wired for success in our own way. You're talking about the last 5 years being quite a challenging time for you in business, challenging time for you with young family and everything like that. So what does success look like for you in the next 5 years?
Success for me is basically being able to sort of fill my caseload back, my sort of casework back up, because there are some holes where the bad place left me some bad decisions. So I just want to get to a stage where I have a comfortable number of clients. I am able to do all of the ridiculous things schools ask of parents. Yep. How does any parent who isn't self-employed do any of the things that schools ask? I think
our school, I have to be quite careful. There's a news article this week about schools, parents criticising schools and the parents not being allowed on the school premises. And I said, don't let me near the school WhatsApp group because otherwise...
Oh, Lord.
But our primary school in Frimley, fantastic primary school, and they must employ somebody to write daily emails because we must get 5 to 10 emails a day. And there's a great marketing precept which is fantastic for the neurodiverse called Too Long Didn't Read. And there's a marketing Too Long Didn't Read and tech one, and you can sign up to all these newsletters. And they're basically a list of headlines and bullet points. Yeah. Now, if the school did that for me and they could have a weekly roundup of like, here's all the things you need to know, and if you actually want to find out more about it, go and click on this link, then I wouldn't have 25 emails a week.
No.
My daughter's going to... their class prize for the term is that they're going to watch a movie and have popcorn, but now they want you to email consent that your child can come in there or bring their pyjamas to school, have pyjamas and a teddy bear and watch a movie and eat popcorn. What teacher thought this through, that actually they're going to send out an email to 30 parents and they're going to get 30 emails back that they've now got a tally against a tick sheet, and just admin for the sake of admin. But as you say, our school definitely employ someone just to do that communications role.
See, the school's pretty good with, like, there aren't that many emails. They're a fantastic school. It's just the sheer, and it's a positive thing. They do so much. So they had like Rockstar Times Tables Day the other day. And even like he's in reception, so it's like, they can dress in like bright colours and stuff. They've done like Rudolph raves, which they've all learnt carols and they come and sing them out in the playground to the parents in the middle of the day. And it's all these wonderful things, and there's a performance at least once a term, like the spring performance, and there'll be one for summer as well. They're all lovely things, but I look at the list that's like, here are the important dates coming up, and I go, how does anyone with a full-time job
the conversation was had in the playground today with some friends of ours that most of them are employed, and both the husbands and wives are there at sports day, and it's been 5 hours out of your working day, and they're like, did I really want to give up a day of my holiday
for this?
And it rained, because
it's sports day and it's May.
And who would do it? So if somebody's really good with words and they think, do you know what, I fancy giving copywriting a go as a career or as a hobby, or just to get them into using those creative juices, what advice would you give to somebody?
Read lots. It sounds like a really odd thing, and it's not just like read business books. Read some business books, absolutely, but read widely. anything you can get your hands on, because it exposes you not just to different ways of thinking, but different ways of communicating, different tones, different voices, different ideas. All of that feeds back into being a good copywriter. Go make connections with other copywriters. One thing I absolutely love about the copywriter community is that it is a community. I have never once felt competition among copywriters. We are generally very supportive bunch. I have a standing on a Tuesday morning between 9:30 and 11:30. There is a group of about 12 copywriters from all across the UK who all get together on a Zoom call, and we co-work and we field ideas and questions, and we support each other. It's fantastic. So yeah, make connections, learn stuff, and keep writing, because you're always going to get better. The more you write, the better you get. It's not about qualifications. Like, I'm one of the odd ones because I have 2 degrees in English, but they're not in copywriting. They're just in, English and creative writing, and then writing for children. All of that informs what I do, but you don't need a qualification to be a copywriter. You need to be passionate about writing and learning. And so long as you can keep those 2 things going, you'll be all right.
Even from a marketing point of view, one of the best things I was told very early on in marketing and business was have scrapbooks of things that you come along across the way. And some of the best marketing ideas, everything in life has kind of been done before at some point.
Yeah.
So, I've literally, the cabinet behind you has got lever arch files full of different things, from trades marketing that we've come across to other things, to something that's really caught your attention. Even when I'm on holiday, I'm picking up magazines of different places. My camera roll is
full of things that I've just gone, oh, I like that, I'm going to take a picture.
That you'll never be able to find again when you actually need it.
Never.
But it's really, really interesting that, you just absorb things, collect them, and you never know when they're going to be used for you.
No, but it always pops up at some point.
Yeah. What's one of the customers you've enjoyed working with most of all? What kind of things, if I can turn around and say, the next 10 years you're going to be writing for these kind of industries?
I'm a bit like you. I think if I had to write for one industry, I would go insane. The thing I like about sort of not specifying in an industry is I get to hop about a lot. I had a lot of fun writing for a plus-size women's underwear company. Okay. Do you think a man could do that job? Probably, but not as well. Purely because there was a lot of lived experience that sort of goes into that, and it's a way of understanding the audience, being one of the gender that requires it, but also having faced some of the challenges that audience faces. It puts you in very
understanding the product, having a good the positioning of the marketing, every part of that. Kind of best way to immerse yourself is the things you either really love working in or you've got experience in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really odd one. I really liked working for a shredding company. Okay. So I wrote for them they're a shredding company based in London, paper through shredders, sometimes uniforms and hard drives, but mainly paper. And I wrote for them for about 5.5, 6 years. Which
is one of the most mundane, day-to-day tasks that, again, going back to the office manager, it's well down the list of things that have got to get done in the office, but
it's something that's got to get done.
Yeah.
And the thing I liked about that is they were very much of the, we just want to know that there are blogs happening. Here's an amount we want per month. Over to you.
Be creative.
They're my favourite kind of clients, because the creative freedom to just go, right, what am I going to talk about is fantastic. And after 5.5, 6 years of writing 3 blogs a month, you'd think I'd have run out of things to talk about. But
I know the way that you spitball ideas and you can kind of spin things.
You have to take the blinkers off and sort of go outside of what your services are and sort of imagine the whole of what the customer is facing, what issue they're facing. So for shredding, it's not just shredding office paperwork. It's data protection and security. It's office workflow. It's clean desk policies that they now have to deal with.
Different industries have totally different security and compliance and all of those types of things to talk about.
Storage requirements, as if you're keeping archives and you've got a big company and your year's worth of files is 3 boxes worth for 1 year of accounts. You need a way of managing that, otherwise you're going to have to pay for more storage space. And you get to throw some fun things in there. So I wrote one that was a Did you ever watch Better Call Saul?
Yep.
You know the episode where he digs through the dumpsters and spends the entire night taping all the documents together? Wrote a blog based on that.
Yeah.
With the
that's quite a common crime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's showing why you don't want strip cut shredders and why they're basically useless and why you need something else. And here's a really good case study. I did another on like what things you can put through a shredder, with the idea being like these shredders are tough, they can cope with anything. And it's, can you put a bowling ball through an industrial shredder? Yeah. Yes, you can. Can you shred an egg, I think is what I called that blog. But I love that kind of, okay, what's the...
We can be playful with an idea now.
Yeah, how can I make this engaging for the customer? Because if I can make the content engaging, then people are going to want to read it. If I'm bored writing it, people are going to be bored reading it. So I will always look for the fun and the creative and the interesting. So I almost like writing for the dull businesses because it gives me more of a chance to do that. Yeah. With the exception of international withholding tax, there's no room for fun there. They're not a fun bunch.
Yeah, I can imagine. With a lot of my clients, one of the key things I've always done from my early days as a sales rep through to working with businesses now, one of the key tools I always use was what I call dream list marketing, which was have a top 10 companies that you'd love to work with. So I'm going to put you on the spot. If you could write for anyone and create and be creative and do marketing and copywriting for absolutely anyone, who would you want to shout out to now and say, hey, let's have a conversation? My dreams would come true if I could come and write for you.
Wilton.
Okay.
That's a really odd one, because my brain immediately went to Ben & Jerry's, but I've met the lead copywriter in Ben & Jerry's.
They've got a very interesting company culture, and there's a lot of things you have to tie into that voice of Ben & Jerry's. So.
I went to a copy convention and saw her speak and met her afterwards, and she's fantastic, and I could never ever live up to her. She's leagues above me. But Wilton, I think, would be a fun one because they are a heritage brand.
Okay.
They're cake supplies, baking supplies, that kind of thing. So I've used all of their products in my related baking escapades. But they're a heritage brand that's starting to feel a little tired and a little vintage in the kind of magazines you find in your grandma's house kind of way. So being able to refresh that and use some of that playful...
Connect them with a new audience of, a next generation of people that are going to use their products rather than I was trying to remember some of the baking books that my grandmother had and some of the magazines that she would read. But, there's a whole generation of people and audience that are connecting in a totally different way now.
Yeah. So being able to sort of bring that to them, I think, would be fantastic.
So your message to them will be, let me help you connect with a new audience and give things a new flavour. Have you ever researched who the marketing director is?
I haven't. I should.
That'll be a little bit of homework. So the last kind of question I've got for you, and I try not to question people like an interrogation, but we've talked about your success, the things you've enjoyed doing, the customers you've loved working with, the challenges that you've been through. If you kind of went back to the beginning and you were sat here talking to yourself, what was the one piece of advice you'd give yourself if you were to go back to the very start? What one thing would you say, keep an eye out for this, or make sure you've got that under control, or, this will be something that you're going to catch your blindside you like an Arctic hitting you sideways on a rainy Tuesday? What would you...
I'm trying to think of a nice way to put this, because it will make me sound incredibly cynical if I say it the way that's in my head. Don't take people's bullshit.
Yeah.
I am a very sort of trusting person, and I will always give people the benefit of the doubt to a fault. Yeah. And it has tripped me up multiple times through the last sort of 11 years. On one occasion, it very nearly cost me the business. Yeah. So I've learnt that, yes, I can still absolutely be trusting and give people the benefit of the doubt, but I've also got to sort of have a bit more of a backbone about it. And
there's a fantastic thing I said to them. Again, I love investing in people before I expect anything back in the relationship. And my partner says to me regularly, you put too much into people before they've signed a contract or done things like that. And the expression was given to me that we need to give out of our surplus. And they gave it a demonstration with a coffee cup. And my great granny lived 2 weeks off her 100th birthday, was born in the late 1800s, and she would wander through her old farmhouse with a cup and saucer, spilling it like this. And she was an East Londoner and would slurp the tea out of the saucer. And it's always made me think, you know, our surplus as being that thing that, you know, we've got our bills paid for, we've done the duties of covering our basic needs before we take that step forward, and that's a massive discipline to actually develop. It's not one I'm great at, but that's one of the things that I'm working on. So that's a really great point. So last of all, where can we find you online? Where can we read some of your stuff? What's the favourite thing you've published that we need to go and find and read?
So my website is vivid-copy.co.uk. You can generally find me under all things Vivid Copy. I think I'm on Facebook, Instagram,
with the trademark
LinkedIn.
Purple hair.
Yes.
It's been fantastic.
Look for the one with the purple hair, and that'll be the right one.
Come up and talk to you if we see you at a networking event.
Absolutely. Come up and say hello. I've forgotten the other thing you said, sorry.
Social media. What's the favourite thing you've written that we need to go off and read?
Oh, Lord. There are too
Apart
many.
from Can It Shred an Egg?
That is one of my favourites. I wrote a piece called Your Date with Miss Metrics once for an IT company, and it's all about learning your data and it being comparable to a relationship and sort of the steps you go through, and sort of how deeply you understand the data versus sort of how deeply invested you are in a relationship. I'm quite proud of that one. It's a very old piece, though. I should probably revisit that at some point.
And update it all. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you, Charlotte Haye. You've been a fantastic guest on this episode of the Wired for Success podcast. Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in to Wired for Success. If something in today's episode resonated, I'd love to hear from you. Drop me a message on LinkedIn or find me on Instagram. If you're a business owner with a story worth sharing, get in touch. You could be our next guest. Don't forget, subscribe, share, and leave a review. It helps more people find the podcast. Until next time, keep going. You are Wired for Success.